How do you get Madness weapons and armor in Oblivion Remastered? In this basic guide, I'm going to be showing you how to get the Madness ore and also how to craft the armor, as well as going over the stats the armor has. The first thing you have to do is enter the strange door in the middle of Nibbin Bay, which is right next to Breville. So the fastest way to get there is to fast travel to Breville and then just head east. After you enter the Shivering Isles, you will have to kill the gatekeeper, which can be accomplished by talking to people in Passwall and finding out that the lady that created the gatekeeper cries at midnight, and then you can take the tears, poison the gatekeeper, and push on through. Now, to actually get the resources for Madness ore, you want to go to areas where there are grummites, and especially dungeons in the Shivering Isles. The types of dungeons you want to look for are generally going to be forts, and in some cases caves. For example, Blackroot Lair is actually a great dungeon to get a little bit of amber, but definitely a good amount of Madness ore. So what you're looking for are dungeons with grummites for the most part, and you're also looking for forts. And if you can get one that has both, it can be pretty huge value, because you can actually get a ton of Madness ore. So let's check out this grummite we killed. So we killed a grummite and we already got a Madness ore. The drop rate of Madness ore on grummites seems to be around 30 to 50%, depending on the grummite, but for the most part it does drop early, so you can collect it early. So one thing to note about Madness weapons and armor is it has the highest stats at level 23 or higher. So if you want to have armor that is equivalent or better than DAEDRIC slightly, or weapons that are slightly better than DAEDRIC, you will want to wait till you are level 23 or higher. So here are the stat differences between Madness and DAEDRIC. Obviously, you can't really get DAEDRIC armor until you're level 20 or higher, so by the time you can get Madness to 23 plus max perfect Madness gear, you can basically just guaranteed craft better gear. As you go through Grummite dungeons, you will start accumulating Madness ore from the Grummites themselves, but also be on the lookout for the Grummite chests that Madness ore usually drops in. These are the types of chests that Madness ore can generate and respawn in. So if you want to farm Madness ore for arrows or multiple sets of armor and weapons, what you can do is just wait 72 hours for the cell to reset, and then you can open these chests again and then kill all the Grummites in this dungeon. Another dungeon that's really good to do that's actually part of the Shivering Isles main quest is Zedelian, and Zedelian has quite a lot of grummites and quite a lot of those chests in it, as well as I think one Madness ore spawn. So the Madness ore spawns are little openings in the ground that have like hands and spikes in them. Another thing you can get from chests and grummites are the matrices, and what these do is when you craft Madness equipment, it will give it a preset enchantment. Another thing to watch out when exploring in dungeons are actual Madness ores out as the object. So this is what Madness ore looks like. So you might think that it's just like a random piece of junk or a rock, but there's actually Madness ore placed in specific areas. Like there's one right here and there's one right here in Blackroot Lair. Now these do not respawn because they're hand placed, but these are Madness ores, and they do sometimes hide them just out in the open like this. Once you have all of your Madness ores and potentially matrices, you want to go to Cutter's Weapons, which is located in Crucible. So this is the main city in Shivering Isles. Here's where it is on the map. To actually make your Madness weapons and armor, you just talk to Cutter, and then click on Forge Armor or Forge Weapon, and you have the option of using a matrix if you have it, or you can just make an unenchanted piece. So the unenchanted pieces are usually better because custom enchants and sigil stone enchants are generally better than the pre-made enchants. But if the pre-made enchants are something you want, you can always make these. And you can also make as many pieces as you want, so if you want to make like 3 cuirasses, you can do that. Or if you want to make multiple sets of armor or weapons. And then, of course, if you want to do other things, like make arrows, you can make a ton of arrows. So the nice thing about making arrows is if you get a matrix, you can make damage 20, like enchanted arrows that are basically slightly better than DAEDRIC arrows. And also, you can just farm Madness ore to make hundreds of Madness arrows, which deal slightly more damage than DAEDRIC. So if you want to poison those or just go for base damage, then run like an enchanted bow or something, you could easily do that and deal pretty big damage. Now for weapons, there's only bow, claymore, sword, and war axe. There's no like dagger, there's no warhammer. So there are weapon categories missing. And also note that Madness armor is heavy armor. So let's just make a few pieces. So let's make the magic boots for fun. Let's make the magic greaves. Let's make the helmets. Let's check it out. Now when you make the enchanted version, it will come pre-enchanted with specific enchantments. So in the case of the helmets, we get Fortify Willpower. We get Fortify Athletics on the boots. And then for the greaves, we get Fortify Endurance. Now of those, Fortify Willpower is actually quite good. So I do recommend making the Madness helmets enchanted if you can. This is the equivalent of a Sigil Stone, so this is actually quite powerful. Now obviously Endurance is not as good and other effects are not as strong, like Athletics is not as good as, you know, Willpower. Willpower is arguably one of the best stats in the game. But that is pretty much it for making Madness gear. Now, the nice thing about Madness stuff is it is slightly better than DAEDRIC. So if you want to get a little bit more base damage, for example, on a Madness sword, you will have slightly higher damage relative to DAEDRIC, and the only thing that's really competitive are certain artifacts. So Goldbrand, for example, has the same base damage as a Madness sword, but Umbra has higher base damage but cannot be enchanted with a damage enchantment. So there's definitely pros and cons to running Madness weapons, but mostly if you just want a little bit of extra base damage on your sword, it can be nice to make. The other thing too is you can always just make stuff to sell it. So if you don't want to do too much farming of heavy items, you can just grab all this Madness ore, which doesn't really weigh as much as hauling several sets of DAEDRIC armor, and then craft all of this stuff with the ore, and you can even sell some of it right back to Cutter, or you can go sell it to someone else. That is pretty much it about getting Madness ore. Definitely like and subscribe if you found this useful, and also we do have channel memberships for when I stream. You can use emotes and do funny things like that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.